amazing.
Yeah.
It's so amazing.
Incredible.
You like sluts?
I'm sorry?
So as you all know, our friends north of the border recently legalized marijuana. Shout out to David Dole, who is probably smoking a blunt as we speak. So, this is great news. Everyone who's reasonable, who sees that this would be not just economically beneficial, but socially beneficial as well, has really been celebrating. But there's one individual on the right in America who isn't too happy about Canada's plan to legalize marijuana, specifically because he believes this could influence other countries, namely the United States, to legalize marijuana here. And that person is Jesse Lee Peterson. Now, I don't know how I've been out of the loop on this guy, but I found out about him at Politico, or Politicon rather, and I don't even know what to say. This is someone who is
amazing,
a diehard Donald Trump supporter. He constantly talks about, beta males and alpha males, and he is seemingly insecure. He's always trying to reinforce this idea that he's an alpha male. So let's watch it, and then I'm going to respond to the reefer madness level of propaganda that he is going to espouse during this short clip.
So the entire country of Canada has now legalized marijuana, pot, drugs. And they have done it for several reasons, but the primary reason is to weaken the young, to get the potheads so deep in unconsciousness that they can manipulate them and use them for whatever purpose that they need. And I don't care what anyone says, marijuana deadens your consciousness. I know people think that they're conscious when they're high, but you're not. And then as time goes by, you become dumber and dumber and dumber and weaker and weaker and weaker. And if you notice, young men and women today are not moving away from their parents. They're not out dealing with life and building a life and building a career and making money in life and giving back to the country. They are at home at the age of 18 to, in some cases, 60 years old. They are living with their parents. And the parents are so weak that they can't force them out because they have not built that inner nature that causes you to want to leave home at 18 and develop and grow. I couldn't wait to get out of my home at 18 years old because I was prepared from day one. And I'm so grateful because it's made a man out of me. And so legalizing marijuana is not a good thing. And I don't want to hear whether alcohol is legal, right? I don't care about that. Just because alcohol is legal, that's not a reason to legalize marijuana. I personally know friends who were on pot and they could never get over it. And they end up dying at young ages, several of them. And so this is coming to America. There's a push, and it will happen if you allow liberals, Democrats, Rhino, and others to run the country. It will happen in America.
You're damn right it's coming to America, and much to the chagrin of people like Jesse Lee Peterson, most of us are happy about this, and for good reason. In fact, public support for marijuana legalization is now at an all-time high, with 62% of Americans now in support of full legalization as of 2018. And when you control for generations, you'll see that the older you are, the less likely you are to be in support of legalizing marijuana.
Amazing.
So, I mean, really, it's no surprise that someone in Jesse Lee Peterson's age range would have these antiquated views about marijuana. I mean, we see it all the time. Thankfully, I think that a lot of us are changing their minds, but for the most part, I mean, you saw the poll results. By and large, they're more likely to be against marijuana legalization. Now, he states that the primary reason why Canada legalized marijuana, quote, is to weaken the young and also to manipulate them and use them for whatever purpose they need. So that doesn't even make sense to me, because if you're trying to manipulate the young and use them for a particular political purpose, then wouldn't you try to make sure that they drink more alcohol instead of smoke marijuana? Because when you drink alcohol, that literally could kill you if you drink enough. And you don't have to drink very much to just become mentally incapacitated, right? You could get drunk, you can become belligerent, you cannot think clearly. So that would be an easier tool to manipulate someone with in the event government actually had an interest in doing that, but I don't think that that's what they're doing. It's much easier to manipulate people through the use of propaganda, Fox News and whatnot, and your show, Jesse. But what he's saying here, to weaken the young, I mean, he pulled that out of his ass. He's making that up. Now, also, another hilarious thing he said here, he attributes young women and young men living at home at older ages to pot use. He says, quote, they're at home at the age of 18 to, in some cases, 60 years old. If you are living at home at the age of 60, I hate to break it to you, you are no longer a young person.
Amazing.
By and large, millennials are living at home until they're older. Yes, that's true, but why wouldn't you just automatically and instinctively really attribute that to economic changes and economic factors? Why wouldn't you think, okay, well, when I was young, I was able to move out when I was 18, and nowadays, these millennials, they're living with their parents until they're 25, 30, and the assumption is that these millennials who are living with their parents, they don't really want to move out. They like living with their parents, and it's because of pot use. It's making them lazy. Well, no. Pot use has nothing to do with it. If they're living with their parents, it's because the economy changed. It's because boomers like you, when you were young, you were able to get a job at Taco Bell and buy a house, have a family, put yourself through college. And nowadays, we can't do any of that because of the changing economic landscape. Government no longer subsidizes education to the extent that they did, hence why education has skyrocketed and why we all are plagued by student debt. I mean, housing costs have increased. The cost of rent is insane, but that wasn't the case when you were young. But since he just doesn't like millennials, he thinks, oh, well, it's obviously because they're lazy and they're smoking pot every day. No, that's not it. You can smoke pot and still be a productive member of society. It's just that nowadays the economy is completely different than when you were young. In fact, I smoke pot, not all the time, but relatively frequently, and I'm still a productive member of society. I smoked pot all through, graduate school and in the PhD program I was in. It doesn't make you less productive. In fact, I would argue personally that it makes me more productive because it helps me to relax and chill out. But to him, nah, it's not changing economic conditions. It's specifically because these millennials are all potheads. That's why they're living at home longer with their parents. Ridiculous. Now, in anticipation of the counter argument he knows that we're going to make, and I was going to make this, he says, quote, just because alcohol is legal, that's not a reason to legalize marijuana. And that's fine, right? But you have to be consistent here. If you're against the legalization of marijuana, but you're also against alcohol being legal, then that's fine. I mean, I would vehemently disagree with that, right? But that's fine because you're being consistent, but you don't get to say, oh, well, just because we legalized alcohol doesn't mean we should legalize marijuana. Well, why not? It's less harmful than alcohol. But he's gonna get to what he thinks about just how harmful cannabis is. He literally claims that he knows friends who, quote, could never get over pot and ended up dying at young ages. Yeah. There's never been a reported case of somebody dying because they overdosed on marijuana. But apparently, we're all not privy to what Jesse Lee Peterson knows. People have died from marijuana, and Jesse Peterson happens to know multiple people that have died from marijuana. I mean, this is just absolutely unreal. Now, assuming that there's a kernel of truth to this story and that he did have friends that died at a young age, why would it be the case that marijuana was the cause of their death? In order for us to buy into this, Jesse, you're expecting us to believe that you happen to know the only people ever in the history of humanity that died from marijuana overdoses. That's what we have to believe in order to accept your argument. You understand why this is absurd, right? So this is beyond insanity. And when I was watching this, I couldn't help but think that this was just indistinguishable from satire. In fact, I made a satirical marijuana, quote, propaganda video a couple of years ago to kind of poke fun at a lot of the public figures and politicians who are trying to promote this myth that marijuana is a killer, or it's dangerous, or it makes you lazy, and basically all of the propagandist assertions that we heard Jesse Lee Peterson make in this video. And I think that because it's relevant again, because we're seeing this level of insanity again, now that Canada voted to legalize marijuana, I think that this old clip that I posted to the channel in late 2016, it has a newfound relevance all over again, so I'm going to leave you with that. And, you know, I hope that Jesse Lee Peterson gets to experience pot, because he might actually like it and it might help him out a little bit.
Since the dawn of time, mankind has been plagued by war, poverty, and natural disasters. But nothing can compare to the most destructive force in the world: marijuana.
Legalization of marijuana for tax purposes, and that's the only way people justify it, because you can't justify it any other way. It's blood money.
I mean, people on pot that shoot each other, that stab each other, strangle each other, drive under the influence, kill families, wipe out a whole family.
Marijuana leads to doing worse things. That's just a fact. I don't care what anybody says, what the debate is.
The only reason you use weed outside of a medical situation is to intoxicate yourself.
But we also have anecdotal evidence now from Colorado where some of the people who were taking marijuana for those purposes, the coroner believes after they died there was drug interactions with other things they were taking.
Even a single marijuana can be deadly. The liberal media hides the truth about marijuana, arguing it's safer than alcohol and cigarettes. But even just one marijuana can tear apart families.
All right, I'll get straight to the point. I found marijuana in the house.
Lead to death. Or worse, cause homosexuality. Those that know the truth are laughed at.
So what we have here is a case of money over morality. And, you know, right now, it's really funny. Folks, we're watching the chuckleheads, you know, we're watching these folks doing what they're doing out there and getting a good laugh about it. But when the body count starts rising, when people start dying, then maybe, yeah, it's real funny, isn't it? Real funny to talk about.
Meanwhile, people are dying. This man died after taking just one marijuana. His friends told him it was safe because they heard it from liberal cucks like T.J. Kirk, Secular Talk, and the Humanist Report. We must stop the marijuana epidemic now, and you can help. Share this video with your friends. It could save a life.
Support this podcast by becoming a patron at patreon.com/Humanist Report.